Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Amitabh here. I am from PeopleBridge, and we are very proud to host a very interesting discussion with two of the, I would call them industry stalwarts from the perspective that both of them work from startups. And Ruben has a very different background. He started as a chartered accountant, then moved into HR analytics, realized that, while he does enjoy numbers and accounting, but he enjoys numbers and accounting of a very different kind and which is not more on the numbers per se, but more on how do you get the right talent into your organization and how do you build the talent pipeline for your organization. So he has done a lot of work in from the talent assessment, talent pipeline, succession planning, assessment. He has done a wonderful work in that, which is and his is one of the pioneering companies in India, because most of the time whenever we talk of talent assessment, we always look at overseas models, whether it is this, whether it is Firobi or any other model, and most of them are suffer from some of the typical problems which you will see because they are imported models, although they have been around for some time. But what I would also call is that they were built in an era which was pre World War II era, and the world has moved on quite a lot. And we are very proud to have that there's an Indian company which has done so much of work in this space. Thank you, Ruben, and thank you for taking out time. And we look forward to hearing more from you. Our other speaker is Mr. Kumar Mayank, or Mayank Kumar, or Kumar Mayank, as he's like to be called. He's co-founder of a HR tech startup, which is Zimeo, and these have been very successfully running, and they have done a lot of work in terms of HR automation space and digitization of HR. And as the organization look to move away from the paper-based to automating their HR processes, he will bring in a very different perspective as to how do you move forward. The topic for today, what we are looking as is retaining the right talent the right way. I don't want to get into the repetition of what kind of a problems has been created for companies by this coronavirus epidemic. So that is not the, it will become, almost 2 months of discussion, non-stop discussion without we being reaching anywhere to the conclusion. But what is happening is that, as an organization and as a business, every business is under pressure somewhere to cut cost. And typically what people see it as manpower is among the first cost item to be attacked, because that is large part of it is variable. So rental agreements, you look at it, rental agreements are 3 years, 5 years, your machinery is fixed. There are so many fixed costs. But typically manpower costs are seen as variable, and a lot of companies have gone, some have gone, okay, we'll cut 50% manpower. Some have gone ahead and cut, 50% of the salaries. You hear so many stories, floating around in the market, and most of it is true. Let me put it that way. So in this kind of a scenario, it becomes really imperative for an organization to understand, what kind of a talent they should retain, and also what kind of a talent they should encourage. Because if you cut the salary of the right kind of talent, it may also dent your what I would call as a chance of a recovery later on in the future also. So if you are down, you will continue to remain down, because you have the best people have left you, and when you have when there is a market for your product or services, you will find that there are no you left to execute it. So how do you resolve this dilemma at this of cutting cost, as well as ensuring that you are able to encourage and tell your right talent, and also obviously survive the cash crunch which is going to be there, and looks like this cash crunch is going to continue at least for this calendar year, if not for the entire financial year. So without taking too much of time, I would invite Mr. Ruben to start off, and then it will be followed by a small presentation from Mayank, and then we will have the Q&A. So Ruben, over to you. We look forward to hearing from you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Amitabh, and thanks everyone for joining in today. I hope you're all doing well and safe. So let's quickly begin without taking too much of time any further. So basically, if you look at business, business is basically a constant flow of people, processes, and products. Uh, it is the people who create the processes, and these processes end up being created as products and services. And this is the continuous cyclical flow that happens in business. And while we focus a lot on the products or the processes or the services, we often try to neglect people, as Amitabh has rightly pointed out, that the first victim or the first saboteur becomes the people. Now, why does it happen so? Because, of course, there is greater visibility. There's greater visibility of people. And it seems like the organization is nothing but only the people. It is a fact that you could also cut processes and products and not just people, and which is what I'm going to uh, talk here about. That it is not that you just have to look at cutting people. Now, while you see that processes and products are nothing but the derivatives of people. So the kind of people you have will determine the kind of processes and products you kind of produce. Why? Because starting from the entrepreneur or the founder or the management team, they decide what products and services the company is going to sell, and hence what kind of processes you might require for it. And then you bring in people who are aware of these processes or can enhance these processes or bring about greater change in the products and services offered. So finally, it is actually a great amount of people factor in the entire journey of the business. So how do you go about this? Now, people efficiencies. So the efficiencies in people can be clustered into these three things. See, certain people are very good with information. So when I say information, information means there are two types of information available in the world. One is textual information and the second is numerical information. So though someone could say that, okay, you also have graphical information, but graphical information is just a representation of that textual or numerical information. So one is that there are certain kind of people who are very good with information. The second is people can be found to be very good with ideas. People who are creative, people who are innovative, people who are uh, uh, production focused, or people who are idea focused. So there are people who are the ideators in the company. So there are people who are very good at handling information. Then you have people who are very good at ideating or creating ideas. And the third thing is there are people who are very good with things. So things are basically the objects. So there are people who are engineers. Engineers are very good with things. They are able to create new things out of their own internal efficiencies. So if you can break things down into smaller pieces, into smaller clusters, you will find that finally it is about figuring out, first of all, that what is the organization in, what kind of a structure is the organization in, and hence what is very important. Now, to give you a perspective here, let me tell you that we have moved from a solid state organization to a liquid state organization to an air state organization. So how is it? The early age industry or the early age organizations were all about things. Okay, so you had production of metal, production of goods, production of various kind of things which could help in leveraging on metals or leveraging on science knowledge to basically deliver what we need. So the electric engine helped us move from one place to another. Then came the age of liquid things, so which is the age we are probably currently in the midst of. So we are in the midst of the liquid age versus the air age. So what is the liquid age? That you have a lot of flexibility. So today Airbnb does not need to own rooms, or Uber does not need to own cars, right? So the age of platforms has come in. So if you look from the other side of this image itself, you'll see that we have moved from things to ideas. And today we are somewhere between the ideas and information, because the next stage, which is the air age, is going to be about information. So what is this kind of mix of ideas and information? Your whole blockchain, your whole algorithmic approach is all about a mix of ideas and information. So where you are able to take ideas, add information to it, and come out with newer solutions to our everyday problems. So it's not that the things industries will go away. The whole manufacturing, what we were talking about, is not going to go away, but the predominance of information-based companies, ideas-based companies are going to come up. So currently we are more focused on ideas-based companies. So we will see that everyone is trying to float an idea today. All startups are all about ideas. But the next stage startups, I believe, would be all about information. So who are able to leverage information to deliver you a newer insight. So that's going to be the next interesting thing. Any questions over here, or we'll rather take the questions at the end?
Yeah, we will take the questions at the end.
Sure.
That will be easier. Yeah.
Sure. So now what has happened is, so if you look at organizations, it has become what we call a survival of the fittest. Now, typically survival of the fittest, this term is attributed to Charles Darwin, but the fact is actually he adopted this term from Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer actually first talked about survival of the fittest in terms of economies. So if you look at companies like Google, they act like shadow companies. So they are talking about search algorithms, but in reality, what it is, Google is a media company. It's basically content. In fact, the largest search engine is Google. How many people are aware what is the second largest search engine? Any ideas?
Bing.
Can we have some quiz here? Yeah. So no, not Bing. Anyone wants to take a guess? Okay, I'll not hold on. So the next biggest search engine, okay, someone seems to have saying Yahoo, Jeeves. No, the second biggest search engine is YouTube. Okay, so a lot of people cannot see it. Yes, absolutely. Just yeah, YouTube. YouTube has become the second biggest search engine. So people are going to YouTube to find out solutions. So you can see how companies are transforming themselves to find out solutions. And to survive, hence, you need to mutate or procreate. You need to take the decision of mutating or procreating yourself. Now, the smaller you are, they are able to mutate. But the larger you are, you can only procreate. An elephant cannot mutate compared to a virus, which can mutate. So for an organization, the first and the core basis becomes adaptability. The first thing that you have to survive is to be able to adapt. So which means when you are looking for people, and because organizations are all about people, the first quality you need to look at is to find out whether they have qualities of adaptability. See, if someone says, no, I am only a marketer, I cannot, or I am a HR and I will not do some other job. The point is you might be thrown out of the organization because of your inability to mutate, right? The second part is, of course, then comes to speed, strength, and size, and we'll talk about it. So understand that fitment, when you are looking for the right talent, fitment is not the outcome. Fitment should be the approach. So when you are trying to fit someone into a certain role, you have to look at these factors of adaptability, strength, speed, and size. And I'll come to the other factors. So organizations which are able to adapt themselves will find themselves in better light. We know so many companies have floated out. They have completely got wiped out because they have not been able to adapt. And I just don't want to take names because we know there are a lot of companies who have failed out just because they did not get to adapt themselves. So why is adaptability so important? So here's a nice example. So when Walmart was being threatened by Amazon, what Walmart did initially was to create the e-fulfillment centers within their stores. But they did not allow exchange to happen within the store. And that was one big problem. So which means if you bought something online from Walmart, it was only through online you could change it. You cannot go to a Walmart store and change it. And quickly Walmart understood that this is becoming very, very difficult. So it quickly scrapped the idea of the strict separation between online versus physical stores, and it allowed e-fulfillment stores to exist within the store itself. Now, just see how it really helped them. First thing is that they immediately adapted to the competition coming in from Amazon, right? By creating a structure. So if you have to create a structure, what do? Just do you go out and buy manpower? No. You first find out who are the people within the organization who can adapt to the new roles, right? And put them. Why? Because this also gives you the confidence, and it tells the people within the organization that, hey, there's not to worry. This company really thinks they are willing to train, retrain, and resize and put us into newer roles. Because for the person also, it's a great thing to learn new things. So it's very important to be able to adapt. In fact, digital leadership is currently one of the most sought after competencies. That are you able to adapt to digital leadership practices? Second is speed. So speed, now here speed does not mean volatility. It means intent of the purpose of speed, which means sometimes you need to be slow, sometimes you need to be fast. One of the good examples comes from Reliance. Reliance is known for its speed of execution, which means it has people who are very good at decision making, and they are awarded the freedom to find solutions, to deliver solutions with speed. So which means finding people who are able to do things, execute things fast becomes a very important criteria when you're trying to resize and retain the right talent. Okay. Look at the cheetah. The cheetah is all about speed. So sometimes it's not your size, it's your speed. But a combination of all these factors become the most important factor. The third factor becomes strength. Now, strength is not the physical strength. It is about the ability to adapt to the various kinds of skills or threats that come. So one great example is DBS Bank. Most people would have heard about it. Now, DBS, what happened is, it was initially, most banks looked at banking as a specialization, not realizing that banking is all now today about transactions. So they quickly moved from an 85% outsourced IT to an 85% insourced IT. And they transformed people within the organization, changed their mindset, and they also retained the right minds in the business based on people who had the strengths to learn. Okay, so you're finding out people retaining employees who have the core strengths in line with the organizational objectives is more important rather than just looking at business number achievers. Because sometimes we get floored by people who are doing very good in terms of achievement of numbers, but as soon as the solution changes or the scenario changes, they are no longer able to add value to the organization. So it's hence very important to look at strength. Just like you don't want to be a food manufacturer and be sourcing, lying at the mercy of farmers. Similarly, you don't want to be an engineering company and at least don't have good engineers to be the representative of the brand. So it's very important to also look at people who have strengths in line with the organizational objectives, so that even if the path slightly changes, the objective doesn't, and people are able to fit into the newer roles, right? So don't look at the very narrow purpose of simple achievement of numbers, but rather look at the broader perspective of achievement of organization objectives. And so the strengths to adapt become very important. And finally, size. Size, aka scale, is basically how you are able to leverage on your size, your operations, to eliminate efficiencies. Okay, so the right team. Now, there's a very good saying that, typically, if you have a size of a team strength or a department strength more than 100, 122 people, the department is no longer able to add value, right? We similarly know that having the right size, if you think about humans, if humans were slightly more taller, right, or slightly more shorter, they would have not been able to gain the whole premium of intellect which we have gained today. So when you are looking at size, it's very important to look at your different grow exit framework to find out that what is the right size of the team. Now, always remember that a lot of people think that, okay, when I'm trying to create the right team, I should pick up only the good guys. No, it's not like that. See, often you also need the clown in the pack who can keep the team in good spirits. But it's more important to find people who match up to the values. If people don't match up with values with each other, it is not a team which will perform. Also, even if people are of the similar values, the more larger the size is, the more fragile it is. Okay, and this is absolutely applicable in anything you take. The larger the size of anything, the more fragile it becomes. Okay, so the whole people who want to understand this theory better can read up Mr. Nassim Taleb, who talks of the fragile versus anti-fragile, who says that the smaller it is, the more anti-fragile it is, but the larger the size becomes, it becomes anti-fragile. But then also you have to understand that the structure has to be sustained. At the end of the day, the organization has to survive. So having the right size with the right combination would help you sustain tomorrow and to sustain today and to grow tomorrow. I hope you guys are with me till now. You're finding it interesting. So finally, what do you need to really do? Uh, yeah, thanks, Tanya. So what do you need to do? See, you have to understand that when you look at the job roles at the workplace, there are multiple ways to look at it. And one of the ways to look at it is also to look at the job roles, that whether they can be put into the slots of people complexity tasks versus task complexity tasks. Okay. So take, for example, strategy, which is less people complexity, less task complexity, but more about ideation, right? So going back to my earlier slide where I talked about ideas, right? So people in the strategy function need to be great ideators, whereas people in the operations function need to be more things people, right? They need to be more caring about things. Uh, Similarly, when you're looking at functions which are more customer focused, there you need people with high people complexity capabilities. In fact, at pexiscore.com, that's what we do. We help assess people to tell you where do their strengths lie. So to answer Milan, where he said, can we find out for students? In fact, we have a tool called Career Graph, where we help you to tell you where the student could actually do better in their career. See, even today, if you have studied engineering, you could go to an engineering company, or also you could go to a bank, right? So it's absolutely possible uh, to find out who fits better. So look at things from much smaller perspectives, and you'll be able to actually address 80 to 90% of the problems of the organization if you are addressing the people problems first, which means finding out the people, finding out what are their core strengths, finding out where do they find speed of purpose, and how can you then bracket them into the right combinations as per the job roles. So talent management basically takes into uh, uh, the 4 factors of capability, which is all about your physical versus your mental skills. It is about the cognitive factors, which means how well are you aware of using your mental skills and logic to come to solutions. In fact, cognitive skills are the most demanded skills today. Behavioral skills, which tells us that how would you typically react 80 to 90% of the time based on past experiences and beliefs. And finally, what motivates you. So even if you have all these capability cognition, your motivation will finally determine whether you're the right person for the job or not. Like everyone would know engineering, but probably someone who studied in an IIT would love to consult rather than actually build machines. Whereas someone from a tier 2 or tier 3 college would love to rather build machines than uh, 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 then try to consult other organizations. So when you mix the combination of understanding what are the factors which are important with learning skills and the right culture, you're able to come to the core talent. And that is what core talent is all about. That is what talent management is all about. And that is where assessments play a big role. Now, why are we saying that it's important to look at these factors? Because, there's this wonderful anecdote which I love quoting, that the electric bulb did not come from the continuous improvement of candles. So if you are looking at metamorphosis, if you are looking at trying to resize, restructure your organization, please understand that improving what is already there won't help. You have to relook it. To give you, again, a very practical example for the digital perspective, see, one of the things is that you could just put a simple platform like, say, for example, um, um, a tool where people could do accounting on the tab, right? But does that mean a digital transformation for a retailer? No. A digital transformation is where you are not only you have a tab to account for, but you are also looking at digital currency rather than looking at cash. Now, when you are trying to bring in efficiency, when you're trying to bring in survivability, remember that people who are able to think through the problems, not from the narrow spectrum of just the task itself, but from the perspective of what will survive the coming generation and what will survive the coming decade, are the organizations which will survive, are also the skills which will survive. So it's very important to understand that, look at what are the culture and values of your organization, understand the people's cognitive capability, motivation, their behavioral levels, measure what is the current level, what could be the expected levels, and then look at further how, if you have to groom them further, what are the potentials that you're looking at in terms of leadership potential, skills potential, learning potential. Because remember, leadership is all about learning potential. The more you're open to ideas, the more you're willing to learn, is only when you can transform yourself into a leader. Otherwise, you'll remain a manager. And that's the difference between a manager and a leader. Everything else is same. A manager remains functional. A leader becomes more cognitive and more cognition approached. And finally, then you should be able to create your policy.
Ruben, we lost your voice in the last sentence. If you can just repeat it.
Sure. So when you look at finally, when you are looking at creating the leadership potential and grooming the people whom you have retained, you need to also measure their potential for the future. Because one of the mistakes what we do often when we are trying to retain people are we are looking at them only from today and not for tomorrow. See, when you have a person, you have that person for the next 3 to 5 years to the minimum. Sometimes you could have that person even for 20 years. So it's important to understand that, are you carrying a baggage or are you actually holding a star on your shoulders? So it's important to understand even their potential, because leadership is all about potential. Leadership is all about learning. People, leaders, so that's the difference between managers and leaders, that managers are all about functional skills, leaders are all about cognitive skills. Okay, so when you start building your defend, grow, exit, which means you defend your performers, you grow your high potentials, and you exit your weak executioners, you will have to go through the previous journey of actually understanding where are they vis-a-vis the current expected skills and what are their potentials. So it's very important to measure that back. And that's where actually companies like PeopleBridge, companies like PexiScore, companies like Zenio come into play. Very specifically, my company helps in these measurement activities, as Amitabh thankfully introduced that we do some very unique measurements, because we do not carry a baggage, as he pointed out about the FICO or the DISC, or even if you look at MBTI. These are basically type indicators, and the problem with type indicators is that you have every sun sign where you would have successful people. So type indicator is not important. The fitment approach is more important. So that's where I'll end today. I think I've been able to complete within my time, Amitabh, and I'll wait for some questions if someone has, quickly to address them, and then probably we can move to the next part of the session. Over to you, Amitabh.
Oh, I think we can move on to the next part of the session.
Sure.
Yeah, hi. Good evening, everyone. Please comment if you can see my screen as such.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
And by the way, thank you, Ruben, for a wonderful and enlightening, description, and it was really too good to understand it from your perspective. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just gonna, now that Ruben has done a phenomenal job of telling us what is the good ways to, upgrade as an employee as well as a manager to scout for the right talent. I'm on the other hand, in which I have to say that, now comes the dirty part of it. That yes, the business has taken a call and now you have to downsize. Okay, this is now inevitable. What is the way? What has to happen? So the headers that you will see here in my presentation, is it even required? What should be the selection criteria and how to downsize, and a perfect example of a downsizing. So what we are seeing, everywhere across sectors is that downsizing has to happen for the simple reason that business has to survive, right? If the business survives, it can go back and hire the people it had to let go, and maybe give more people a chance when the market stabilizes. So where we stand as of today, day in day out, we are talking not in hundreds, not in thousands, maybe lakhs of people maybe have to losing job. But what is the science behind this madness? I mean, it cannot be all haywire, right? So let's start with if it is even required. Now, there are certain companies who, just because of the gist of it, because the market is moving that way, have let people go. But there are companies who stand benchmark, like AT&T, who had to retain 1 lakh of the 2 lakh 40,000 workforce. That is almost 40% of the workforce. They retained from 13 to 2020. I mean, that was the plan. In fact, this paid off. That in 2016 itself, the chief strategy officer said the revenue has increased by 27%, and it made it to the 100 best companies to work for. Now, why did this happen, right? It ensured that it's going to retain not just the workers, but it's not going to lose the knowledge that it had, undertaken the effort to train and be gone with. See, all the employers in the call and all the team managers, if you can resist, right, this might work for us. And why it would work is the second part, that actually it's study proven that downsizing firms are more likely to go bankrupt than companies who are not downsizing. So let's understand first that if it is required, and what are the ways. So you can allow voluntary layoffs, people who might want to retire early, or maybe people who are okay for a severance pay, looking for other opportunities, or you can ask them for an unpaid leave with their consent and just get them back when the financial woe passes. And a lot of companies are doing it. Some of the startups have been a shining example of this, but how do you implement it in your company is the bigger call. And of course, the pay reduction. Companies, I know people at 1 crore packages who have gone down to 20 lakhs as fixed and said that 80 lakhs is worth the variable. That is that employee has taken the onus. So build a culture in which you can understand this, that downsizing is just not employees, it's also downsizing on the cost to the company. If you can reduce it down, it's worth the effort. Now, what should be the selection criteria if this has to happen? First, of course, there is no science behind it. It has to be performance based. I mean, this is while, everyone, as I said, is going to, let go people without putting in brains behind it, but it has to be in a very scientific way. Because as a HR manager or as a team manager, this is your biggest responsibility. You are deciding the future of a person who would have been your biggest asset. So how do you develop tactics? What is the science? What is the data-driven way in which you're going to do ensure that the selection criteria is appropriate? So performance-based. I'm just going to show you an example, but before, skill-based, which might be that skills like what Ruben was talking about, that machine learning. Is it the company's vision that maybe we are going to automate a lot of the process? Then are we going to look at people who are going to do this in your company? Comes the multiple selection criteria. So you can have a mix of a lot of other factors, that people who have given their youth to the company, early employees, and then you should not be considering seniority pay grade to this. Now, just a shining example of this is a performance management, right? You need not have a software for this. You can just go by just an Excel. You can say that this is a support role. I'm going to define your weightages. There are certain numbers that I've put to it. You can define attributes and you can actually measure, because that is an appropriate scientific way to let go of the people. And then how do you do it, right? So of course, one thing you have to ensure as a HR manager, as a management, that the most important aspect of downsizing is that people leave with dignity by choice or even without, because the crisis has happened. And this, the onus is completely on you, and you can ensure it. If you do it in a data-driven way, in a scientific way, and the person knows that yes, company was going through a crisis, they were like 20 of us, one had to excel, he will just understand that. I mean, you cannot just ask because you're not performing. That is very qualitative. People who would have let go, and when the company would have been growing back, and look back and see that, oh no, I wasn't given a fairer aspect. I wasn't given a fairer choice. So you have to give them a fair choice. You have to define goals. You have to set expectations. So if the employee, or if your team, your team has not understood the expectations, you can go back and set those expectations that this is what is required. And then you can measure those performances. Like performance was what I showed you. So timesheets is basically, it's a software that allows you to log minutes, hours. There's a to-do list that, what was the actionables, who has done what. And then there was a time and budget management tools like calendar, or maybe it is just qualitative that people have to attend 30 days. So you can ensure that if you have to let go of 2 out of the 20 people, who are the people who are punctual? So you have to quantify everything. Qualitative would not work, because you cannot just say that I was not feeling good, so I had to let you go. I mean, the management doesn't feel that you are the right fit. That is very qualitative. You have to make it quantitative. You have to make it a very data driven. It's somebody else's future that is in your hand. You have to respect it. You have to allow him to live with dignity, is what I'm saying. And once you have all these quantitative measurables, like the number of hours to do, and the budget management tools, then you can put them in engines like a performance management engine or a compensation management tools. There are quite a few in floating, not to pitch ourselves, but we also have our solutions for this. But this is Requiem. Now let's go and understand one of the shining examples that has happened. This is a company, it's the unicorn, a bootstrap unicorn in the world, Buffer. So what they had done was, this is their actual balance, okay? They sat on this. They went in a very differentiated way. So this was the company, if they would not have downsized it. So downsizing is not wrong, right? As an employee also, you have to understand that if the company survives, right now they might be sounding harsh of cutting down your pay grades from 100 to 25%, but maybe in times when the company improves, they might cover it up in better ways. So you have to trust your employer. I mean, apart from that, what else? You have to give it to them. So there were certain measures that Buffer took. The first one, and I hope everyone can see my screen. First was they examined the organization chart. And this is what you can do. I mean, this is the least of the things that anyone should do, that you should examine the organization chart. Okay, am I missing? Okay, yes. And then you can go role by role. So if market has gone down, marketing is not a function, can that person is that role even required? Can we move that person to another department? So first, if that department or that designation was actually required, is this a role with multiple people where we can have more people than currently needed? No action. Oh, okay. If it is like 2 people managing the entirety of 20 people's work, they should not take action. I mean, of course, if the team member, if he's a good resource, not to let him go, but put in something that would be growing for the company. And does the team member have a proven track record? I mean, indifferent of whether he was good with us. So you have to also go back and understand in his past jobs, you would have interviewed, you would have been part of the assessment. So you can always say that, I know we are in crunch, we'll take another hit, but I want to retain this guy. And once you have retained this, so look at this, from 50 employees, I mean, they went down to twice the size in just like 3-4 months. They had to let go of 3 to 4 people, but they brought them back, all of them, and then they moved on to, just become one of the biggest shining examples that we see in the startup world. Now, I would want to take a pause. That is all there from me. Coming back to it again, I'm just going to reiterate, this is an example, but there should be a science to how you're going about it. Even before this, you have to define how is your selection criteria to downsize, or how you should be retaining talent. You have to understand what are the skills the company needs in future, what are the performance parameters, what are the bigger aspects the employee has, just apart from his seniority or maybe his grade level, right? And first, going back to the basic, why of all this is, can we just not let people go, and can we move them for a pay reduction or other example? So this is where I'll end my discussion. I know I have a habit of rushing through, but it was of merit to everyone on the session. Just a yes on the chat would do. And over to you, sir, Amitabh.
That was wonderful, Mayank. And so thank you so much. And especially the graph was wonderful. I mean, gives you very good perspective of, how you can do that. Because that is something which is required in today's date as to how you manage your cash flow vis-a-vis your employee cost and expectations and all. So, Ruben, I will go back to Ruben, and well, you have talked about the financial aspect of it, and I will go back to Ruben and ask him to how does the talent assessment, we also talked about, Mayank has also talked about, where does the talent assessment plays this role?
So basically what happens, Amitabh, is like Mayank also mentioned that if you have to downsize, and
Yes.
so that was my focus, that if you have to downsize, retain the right guys, keep the right guys, don't lose the right ones. And to figure out who are the right ones is where talent comes in. Now, talent, if you look at, as I also mentioned, that talent can be in 4 different areas. So you could have behavioral talent, someone who's very good with people. You could have cognitive talent, someone who's very good with logic, someone who's very good with reasoning. You could have skill talent, someone is very good with a task. But the point is that all these 3 fail if the person does not have the right motivation. One great example on a very personal level is a lot of our employees left off and went to their own hometowns, and now they are refusing to come. So while it's not that they don't have the right behavior, they don't have the right skills, the problem is they don't have the right motivation. People are scared, right? So it's very important to understand this whole aspect of it. And if you can look at it from a slightly narrow perspective, it is to look at people complexity versus task complexity. So who are very good? So first of all, as Mayank defined, which are the job roles for which the company needs to retain, right? So do you need to retain a marketing function? Do you need to retain a research function today or not? And if you need to retain, then who are the guys you need to retain? So then the talent function comes to play.
So, Ruben, I also want to ask this question. I will start with Mayank and then come back to you. Mayank also talked about, identifying the job roles. So I will give you one example. This is some of the things which we are seeing what is happening outside it. Look at some function as sales. Typically, companies rely, especially those in the FMCG and a lot of other sectors, companies rely on a lot of feet on the street approach. So they have a larger number of people, who go around from shop to shop or from retail outlet to retail outlet, collect the data and go back and run it. Today they find, this whole job role is almost disappeared. You cannot have, people, moving across from one shop to another. It is not practically feasible. Still the stocking has to be done. Still the sales has to happen. So in this kind of a scenario, how do you identify what is the right, job role going to be 3 months, 6 months, or 1 year down the line? So I will start with Mayank and then I will come back to you, Ruben.
Okay, in my presentation, I measured the broad topic as skills, but as Ruben pointed out, and there might be many assessment tools that can help you identify the right fitment that the employee has, that is first, and then map it to the requirement that the company has. So you have got 100 employees set, you know that the company, if these are the jobs that are going to go away from the company. So this requires a very in-depth knowledge from the company's perspective, that what are the industry leaders, what is that they're seeing from a technical or a automation perspective. Then you go to the international players, you understand what are the jobs that have modified during the way. So I can give you a very good example was the Airbnb that you said, right? So a lot of this there were agents who used to book hotels, right? Those agents are not seen anymore, right? So what has happened is this online thing, when it was coming, there were a lot of companies who were just doing this hotel booking for you, right? They didn't understand that the international market is evolving to a very digital world, and maybe some of these companies or sort of startups could have brought that technology in India and could have leveraged it, right? So for them, they would have needed a technical team, someone who can, visualize well, and third, someone from the supply side who can talk to the different hotels to bring the bring all the hotels on the platform. So this was that company had to envision. So while we implement our HRMS, there are companies who use our budget tools, right? So they have planned for like 3 years ahead in time that they are going to need a data scientist with this specification. And that is even very amazing to us. And they are nowhere in the data space now, but they are making hires today. So that is one from the company's perspective. And even in their assessment, they evaluate people with their logical as well as the aptitude tests for the jobs that are going to come in times to come. So that is a broad thought on me. Maybe Ruben can share a more, more detailed vertical perspective to this.
So that's a very interesting, nugget you shared about, company using your data analytics tool, which is there in your system to, predict what kind of a job roles are going to be there. So
No,
I'm
of
sure
course.
this is good. We will leave this story to for some other day from you to tell us. And we'll definitely like to come back to you on some other day and you can tell us more in detail as to how the company is able to do it. But for the time being, I will go over to Ruben to have his say. Yes.
Yeah, so my thought is that, see, you will have to have both the short and the long-term strategies. One thing is, so as I mentioned, sustain today and grow tomorrow. So sometimes when you're facing the bear or when you face the tiger, right, you don't use your skills. You just run, okay? You turn around and run. So I would suggest that the first thing is that not all businesses are aware. So it comes to the Heisenberg principle, so the more you go out, the more chaos you face, right? So you are unable to predict what is going to happen tomorrow. But yes, to a certain extent you can. Right? So like Mayank pointed out, that if you have done some kind of analysis about your business, and if you are investing in researching about the future and not just living in today, you should be able to find out that what are the next things which are coming up, what are the new technologies, what are the new processes which are coming up in the industry, and you would be able to hence make a difference. To again go back to that example that I spoke about, that a lot of people see that if I just put a nice iPad on my store, on my retail store, that becomes a new technology. No. If you do not change your approach per se to digital, so like someone pointed out even in the group chat, that how do teachers get to adapt? So one of the things is not that teachers will have to adapt. The technology has to be good enough. Sadly, today we do not have good enough technology. The technology should be good enough. So that's where the UI UX experience comes in. If the technology is good enough, the teachers will not find it difficult to teach students. Sadly, we don't have such good technology. So that's again the problem of people. You don't have the right people to create the right tools for ourselves. So if you can, if you can measure talent, if you have actually hired the right talent, people who are adaptable, people who have the core strengths, you will be able to move them into new roles in a much fluid way rather than making more solid transitions. Solid transitions are difficult.
Thank you so much. And there is a very interesting, point which was shared by one of our speakers in one of the webinars. He said they were doing a project for a FMCG company. They didn't take the name. It was, I think, most probably it was a cola giant with which they were working for. And they said a lot of time of the field sales force would go into collecting data related to demand, supply, and reconciliation of it at the headquarter, and a lot of time, especially the first 1 or 2 weeks, would go into collecting and analyzing the data. Still their prediction would go haywire, because if you go to a shop and you want to buy a Coke, if you don't find it, you will not buy it. I mean, you are not going to come back tomorrow to again buy it. Then you will go to the next shop, or if the Pepsi is available, you will pick it up. And they realized that none of this data collation and everything was working. So consumption was more related to weather. So if the temperature is high, you are more likely to order, a Coke or a Pepsi or whatever they were searching. So if they could just, they just worked out a model which was taking into account, the weather prediction. And they said that was more accurate than what was being coming from the field. It's a little unrelated example, but this shows, how sometime, we could be going wrong in our, analysis also. So thank you all for being with us. So I will open up to audience for their questions. You can please type in your questions in the chat box, or you can tell me. We will just, unmute you, and you can go ahead and ask your questions.
So Amitabh, I'll take this question by Paresh. So he's saying
Yeah.
that given the biz reduction in a certain percentage, how much manpower you should reduce and how to prepare for the pent up demand. So I'll give you two answers to it. The quantitative answer is, of course, there are tools like compensation benefits tools. India has one. There are two of them actually. So both of these tools allow you to actually give you the variable percentage. So 12 to 15% basis the business. But the realistic aspect of it, as Amitabh was rightly mentioning, that all these tools have gone for a haywire with this COVID coming, right? Because demand has been unprecedented declining, has seen unprecedented rising now. So I'll give you a parallel example for us. So while we would have seen like certain signups that in May, it has like quadrupled in the first week of June itself. So the science cannot be figured out right now, but you are most welcome to use any of the comp benefit tools to give a percentage. Also, this differs industry to industry and maybe weather-wise, as Amitabh was rightly pointing out. Okay, hope that answers the question.
If you have any supplement question also to that, please go ahead. Feel free to ask.
Our other questions is what. So there's another question by Gaurav Mishra. It reads that what is the responsibility of company or organization, as initially they didn't need specific tech savvy people in the recruitment, but in the present condition, these technologies are not there, right? So on what ethical grounds organization have the right to fire employees? Well, first, of course, this moral and ethical firing has already come in question with a lot of labor law departments challenging some of the unethical firing. But on ethical grounds, there is one during the offer letters, it would have been mentioned on the criteria on which they can allow the let go, depending on the fitment. So if that clauses are there, and depending on the purview of it, so this the current scenario itself, this is a force majeure, which is the clauses can be terminated, the agreements can be terminated. So that forms the legal thought of it. Ethical depends, it's very person and very organization dependent. This is a very tough question to tackle, and I hope I have answered a bit of it. Maybe Amitabh or even can take this up too.
So my take on this is, yeah, so I think Mayank actually answered it almost like 99%. So my only take here is that the company is at a fault to a certain extent, because if it had not, if it could not even perceive the importance of technology, at least at this age and hour, then the company itself should really relook at its own strategy. Because if you are unable to perceive, see what happened, basically people are getting scared, but understand, when you look at this very event 2000 years hence, it will be a small dot, right? It will just be a one small dot as an event, but today it is looking like a very dangerous thing, very big thing, right? Because you are seeing it from a very close prism. But when you move away, you take a 360-degree view, you will see that these are occurrences. See, suddenly a product is not running. It could happen, and nothing to do with COVID. It could just happen, which means that at the core of it, your strategy has a problem. At the core of it, the company's own strategy is not good enough. Because if you are not prepared, so I'll give you one very simple example, like in Infosys, what they do. In Infosys, they have a policy of not having revenue of more than 25% from one group or one client. What it does is that it helps you to hedge risk, right? So if you have put all your eggs in one basket, and if the basket falls, then you cannot blame the basket, right? you have put all the eggs in one. So that's my answer. So
Yeah, I think there is a question for, I think, Ruben, I think you will be the right person to answer this question.
where the kind of people are looking up from teachers are like an arrow shot for the app performance. Okay, as I said, see, one of the things is that the education industry per se, and I have we interact a lot with the education industry, and what we find is, see, it's a gradual decline of quality which has happened, sadly, because earlier teachers were really teachers, so the more your quality deteriorated and you focused more on just the skills part of it and not the pure fundamental understanding of the subject. People are now looking up to teachers like an arrow shot. Yes, people will, right? So you will need someone to blame. See, this is more of a psychological issue. So it will take me a lot of time to explain. But what happens is how the brain functions is that there's an expectation and there's a motivation which you create for that expectation. So if you expect, say for example, a small reward, your respect for that reward, your motivation will also be less, or your behavior your motivation will reflect as a very simple behavior. I'll give you a very simple example. Look at an auto driver. So a lot of people say that auto drivers are rude, right? So it's a very common thing in, I think even in Delhi, even in Bangalore, whichever city you go, auto drivers are rude. But what you don't understand is the auto driver's expectation from you is only that 10 rupees, 20 rupees. So his behavior is related to the value he sees in you. So you could be the president of, whatever, but because the relationship is only limited to that little sum of money, so his motivation to be polite is not there. Right? So you have to understand these teachers also. Teachers are not being paid enough. That's also a big problem. So why do you think they'll be motivated enough to really teach well? So you have to understand the human tragedy is not about not being good enough. It is rather about not being pushed to be good enough.
Very interesting point you have made about the tragedy is not about, we are good enough, but it is that we are not being pushed enough. I think one point I would add to I think the Gaurav, the question which Gaurav has been asking is, and a lot of people ask a lot of time when as an HR person, you face this question, when you are doing a layoff that, people come back and ask, I've been doing whatever, I've been told to do. So what is my fault? See, one thing which we need to understand is in today's world, our career is owned by us alone. The company doesn't own your career. It doesn't own you. You are your own owner. You are your own manager, and you are your own executioner. So please, while it is companies do have a moral responsibility, there's no denying the fact. But at the same time, more than anything else, you yourself have a moral responsibility to keep yourself updated and flexible. I mean, that part of it, we should never forget about it.
Yeah, Gaurav, see, you're right. No one is taking away anything from the teachers. So yes, everyone is doing. Even I have worked with the government here, so we have all been able to contribute, and that's what humanity is all about, right? So, but recognition, sadly, we are in a very fast-paced TikTok world. So, recognition is only for people who can scream out, right? So, just like marketing is there, you will have to scream and talk about your good things, and just not doing good. And if you are doing good, then as they say, that don't let the right hand know what the left hand does. Right? So if you do good, don't expect rewards. You'll get your earnings from karma.
Yes. So I think okay, the very interesting question. I don't know. It is. I don't see any one of us being an astrologer, but still, all of us can take a shot at that. Keeping the present situation, which sector will affect more? So my take is, there will be certain sectors I can see which will be affected most. Will be tourism, travel, hospitality. They are the one which are really bleeding. And Which sectors will pick up most? As of now, I think once the business will have to start. But yes, there will be a lot of, skills which will be in demand, from cyber security to, wherever the people own the customer, that will be a big plus. Let me put it that way. Mayank, over to you. What would be your take?
Well, of course, the industry is everyone is understanding. In fact, there's a very good study now that says that because people were spending on things that didn't matter, and because people are not able to spend, that is why the world is going in a crisis, which means your fashion, your jewelry, your luxury, these are the reasons which used to feed like a quantum of the workforce working in China to make those alligator stitched alto bags for you, or maybe certain very luxury induced items. So the idea is that it is more, it's no more a very uh, uh, aspiration slash expense driven market. It's mere reduced to bare minimum, and in fact this would be a trend for whichever way you go, right? So you would talk about FMCG. Again, even in FMCG, what is selling? Is it the food, the clothes? Of course, these are the essentials, but there are also counter aspects to things like the financial market, right? It might be down now, but if you see the stock market, it's going up because people sitting at home are just making money out of it. So why not encash that? So there are certain segments which the trends would lead down to. Of course, as Amitabh said, we are no astrologers, but financial markets, because I worked in the microfinance and financial segment, this would be clamped for next 3 months, but definitely will pick up. People would be needing money, financial, so SMBs, enterprises, they would be needing credit, and as such, everyone. So people who have been without job, they would be needing some cash to burn, and likewise. So financial markets definitely, cars, vehicles maybe, because people have also realized that why, why you can't be dependent on maybe a shared cabs ecosystem now. And yeah, what are the bigger manufacturing? Oil, definitely more focus on the solar and the renewable energy segment. And I can just go on in my mind, like there are 57 industries. I can take through all of them, but hope that answers the questions broadly. Financial markets, and of course the travel, not the travel, rather the cars, and the vehicle segment is one pick I would make.
So I would just like to add here to what Mayank said and what Amitabh raised. So basically, if you look at the economy and if you take it as a horizontal scale, on one side of it you have the essential services, and on the other end you have the spectrum, you have the luxury services. So anytime there's a recession, it is of course
The luxury.
the luxury services which suffers. In fact, so how do you deal with it? So that's one thing. So one is that you have the spectrum. So on which side of the spectrum you are sitting depends. The second part of it is that how do you reinvent or find reason? So if you look at one of the biggest industries today, and Mayank mentioned that, look at fashion. In fact, look at cosmetics. Do we really need to put chemicals on our face? Think an industry was created out of putting chemicals on your face, and it became the cosmetics industry, and today it is $1 billion industry. Okay, so people are able to find out ways to sell you stuff, and that's where innovation, that's where your ability to adapt, right? So because people are making chemicals, what do you do with the chemicals? How do you sell those chemicals, right? So you convert them into cosmetics. And the third thing is you have to understand that, see, what is important today, what is being seen as important today will become a normal thing. See, electricity today is taken as a given. There was a day when we did not have electricity and it was a privilege. So today, similarly, the digital adoption might seem like a privilege, but tomorrow it will become a normal function. So if you do not adapt, if you do not take cognizance of this factor, uh, you will just fail out. I'm sorry to use that slightly harsh term. So Paresh ji, as you said, what do you do? So again, it is the strategy. There's no right strategy for any particular industry. It depends on where are you in on that spectrum. Can you re-innovate your entire business and do something new, right? And can you look at what seems like something very new today to make it something which is very important in the future?
Yeah, just to add to this, so there was one of our clients who was building something else. They had a manufacturing plant. They moved to PPE. I mean, they know that this is going to be a new norm. There's a business opportunity. They did it. In fact, if you're a small business owner and your business is not in the essential services, I think you can although look at reinventing, as Ruben said. That is one thing we can, of course, do. I mean, as to answer your question, Paresh, there is no exact strategy. We have discussed a lot, and maybe we can take it up one on one. People might be running out of. We have just exceeded the 1 hour
Yes, we just
timeline.
exceeded the
And the
time.
last question is the situation? The gig economy will grow a lot in coming days, definitely. So with that, we have answered all the questions. Over to you, Amitabh.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you so much. And you've been a wonderful audience, a very engaging and very interactive audience. And thank you so much for being with us. And special thanks to our panelists, Ruben and Mayank. And if you need to know more about the solutions and how you can understand and right size your organization, please do let us know. We'll be glad to help you with that. Especially Ruben is an expert in this, and any point in time you need help from Ruben, please get back to him, and he will definitely help you. And yes, the most important part, if you need to automate your organization, because that is, which is going to be the key. Because if you don't have the right set of data, whatever you are doing will not work. So if you need the right set of data, please do connect with Mayank, and he runs a wonderful
I was
HRMS,
actually
and I'm sure. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to refrain from saying that, but one of the biggest hot segments that is coming up is cloud softwares. So
Yes.
all this, even for HR, you will have to take support of it. Do that as I mean, we have already mentioned. There's a lot many things, and there are a lot of available tools on the system. You can scout for it. Whatever is your pain point for your business, accounting, books, all of that is there. Just make best of use of it. Yep.
Thank you so much, and
So just to
good evening. And
add
yeah,
Amitabh, last point that so someone wanted the presentation. I'll be putting it up on LinkedIn.
yeah.
So you can actually find it over there.
And we will also share the recording. Also, we'll send you the link for the recording. So also, if you are not able to hear some part of it, you can always go back and check. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful evening and happy week ahead. Goodbye from our side.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you, sir.